Hi, boys and girls. How are you in 4K? I'm so glad you're here. You will never guess what's happening at my house. Oh my goodness. So let me tell you the story. Are you ready for it? Okay, so this weekend, I was out in my flower beds and I was picking some weeds and putting down some mulch, and I came inside for a drink of water, and then I went back outside and I looked in the top of my van, and guess what? There was long strings of hay and there was some grass on top of my van, and I was like, what is happening? I haven't even driven my van. So I went back outside and I did my thing and just kind of didn't think about it again. And then last night, I hear this, boom, shh, boom, shh. Yeah, so I went, Mr. Nelson, Mr. Nelson. And he went over by the wall, which is like right by our bedroom and it's by the garage. And he heard boom, shh, boom, shh. So then he went out to the garage and opened our garage door. And you will never guess what flew out. Yeah, a bird flew out of our garage. So I wonder if it's because of all that lacing I did with my Cheerios to make bird feeders. Do you think? Well, anyway, I think what is in my garage is a bird's nest. I have a book to share with you, but don't worry. I'm going to go back and I'm going to share with you the bird's nest. Are you ready? The book I have for you is called The Best Nest by P.D. Eastman. All right, let's check it out. Boys and girls, this is just like the things that were on the top of my van. Yeah. Can you believe it? The Best Nest by P.D. Eastman. Mr. Bird was happy. He was so happy he had to sing. This was Mr. Bird's song. I love my house, I love my nest. In all the world, my nest is best. Then Mrs. Bird came out of the house. It's not the best nest, she said. Uh-oh, she looks like she's in the yellow zone. I'm tired of this old place, said Mrs. Bird. I don't like it. Let's look for a new place right now. So they left the old place to look for a new one. This place looks nice, said Mr. Bird. Let's move in here. Look at, they're going to a tree. Do you think that's a good place for a bird's nest? Maybe. Let's see. But somebody else already moved in. Uh-oh, look at, a raccoon was already living there. So they looked at another house. This one looks nice, said Mr. Bird, and there's nobody in it. Uh-oh. Mr. Bird thinks that a boot looks like a good nest place. Do you think it is? You're wrong, said Mrs. Bird. This house belongs to a foot. So they went on looking. I like this one, said Mr. Bird. It has a pretty red flag on the roof. Uh-oh. Let's use our picture clues and figure out what they're going to look at for their bird house. Here's a U.S. mail truck. This is probably a... I've always wanted a house with a flag, said Mrs. Bird. Maybe this place will be all right. Uh-oh. The mailman is trying to put in the mail. Look at the birds' faces. But it was not all right. I guess I made a mistake, said Mr. Bird. You make too many mistakes, said Mrs. Bird. I'm going to pick the next house. And there it is, right here. Look at on top of a church. They flew in. They looked around. Isn't it too big? Asked Mr. Bird. I like this big place, said Mrs. Bird. This is the place to build our new nest. They went right to work. They needed many things to build their nest. First, they got some hay. They got some soda straws and broom straws. They even got some sweater string. Oh no, look at, they're taking the string right off the boy's sweater. They got some stocking string and mattress stuffing. They got some horse hay. They got some they got some horse hair. They got some man hair. Oh my goodness, look at, they're taking the hair right off the horse and right off this man. Soon they had all the hay, all the straw, all the string, and all the stuffing, and all the horsehair, and all the man hair they could carry. They took it all back to build their nest. Mr. and Mrs. Bird worked very hard. It took them the rest of the morning to finish their nest. "This nest is really the best," said Mrs. Bird. "I want to stay here forever." Mr. Bird was very happy too. He flew to the top of his house and he sang a song again. "I love our house, I love our nest, in all the world our nest is best." He was so busy singing, he didn't even see Mr. Parker coming. Uh-oh. Every day at 12 o'clock noon, Mr. Parker came to the church. Mr. Parker came to pull a rope. The rope went up to the bird's new nest. The rope rang the big bell right under Mrs. Bird's nest. Bong, bong, bong. Uh-oh. Mrs. Bird got out of there as fast as she could fly, and she flew away. Bong, 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 bong. Mr. Bird flew this way. Oh no. When Mr. Bird came in, all he could see was a mess of hay and string and stuffing and horsehair and man hair and straws. Where was Mrs. Bird? "I will look for her until I find her," said Mr. Bird. He looked high, he looked low, he looked everywhere for Mrs. Bird. Look at, he looked high and he looked way down low. He looked down into a chimney, but Mrs. Bird wasn't there. He looked down into the water barrel, but Mrs. Bird wasn't there. Look at, these horses are drinking water and Mr. Bird is looking for Mrs. Bird in the water. Then he saw a big fat cat. There was a big fat smile on the fat cat's face. There were some pretty brown feathers near the fat cat's mouth. Mr. Bird began to cry. "Oh dear," he cried. "This big fat cat has eaten Mrs. Bird." Mr. Bird flew off. "I'll never see Mrs. Bird again," he cried. It was getting dark. It began to rain. It rained harder and harder. Mr. Bird could not see where he was going. Crash! Crash! Mr. Bird bumped into something. It was his old house. That old house that Mrs. Bird did not like. "I'll go inside," said Mr. Bird. "I'll rest here until the rain stops." Mr. Bird went in. And there was Mrs. Bird sitting there singing. "I love my house, I love my nest, in all the world this nest is best." Uh-oh, who's singing now? Usually Mr. Bird sings, but now Mrs. Bird is singing. You, here, gasped Mr. Bird. I thought you didn't like this old nest. Mrs. Bird smiled. I used to not like it, she said, but a mother bird can change her mind, you see. There's no nest like an old nest for a brand new bird. Look it, she laid an egg. Yeah. And when the egg popped open, the new bird thought so too. Wasn't that a good story? Yeah, I liked it too. Are you ready to go see my bird nest? All right, I'm gonna climb on a ladder and show you my bird nest. So sit tight, I'll be right back.